this already. I'm putting the whole thing on YouTube.
No, I love it. It's just give me my camera every time we go out.
What?
Give me my camera every time we go out. Awesome.
Get the hell out of here.
One of the nicest details in this area, these bits without the saws are all called the links. But look at those skylights. They've got those kind of propeller-looking rosettes. Those are original to the 19th century. I think it's a touch that you probably won't find in too many prisons elsewhere. So, anyway, by about 1850, maybe 1860, it becomes evident that the idea of solitary confinement does not hold water. First, well, you can't really make people repent. At a certain extent, reform is personal choice. A couple incidents make it obvious that a prison system cannot rely on anybody's inner light. And finally, there's no evidence at all that solitary confinement is working better than any other prison system to turn out reformed inmates. Beyond that, though, too many inmates means it's impossible to have one inmate per cell. So 1913 is the official end date to solitary confinement. That date's important mostly because that's when inmates start doing large-scale communal activities like worshiping together, eating together in big mess halls, playing sports together. But really, inmates were living together by at least the 1870s. So, even though when you have a communal system, you're getting rid of the problems inherent with solitary confinement, the prison does get a lot of new challenges that it struggles with for the rest of the time it's open. Labor takes a very interesting turn these days. Up here you've got two inmates in their cells in the late 1800s, maybe 1880s, 1890s, I'm not so sure. Oh, by the way, you can also see how nicely outfitted the cells were. Wood floors, decorated, but there they are making shoes. So as for labor, the idea still holds true that it's going to be like the practical aspect of the inmates' reform, but the first thing I mentioned earlier, that it's going to offset the cost of running the prison, that really takes off. First of all, multiple hands doing multiple things means labor efficiency goes way up. There are a lot of inmates here now, starting by this time maybe 1,000 or so. Also, inmate labor is so cheap. Just a year ago, I went to Graterford Penitentiary, that's about 30 miles northwest of here. Inmates in 2009 make 25 cents an hour. So just to give you an idea of what labor costs are. And so with the conditions in here, inmates are making tons of goods for very cheap. A problem though, this is not farmland around here anymore. In the intervening half-century or so since the prison opened, Philly has crept right up the hill and surrounded the whole prison. So these inmates are working alongside free laborers, but way outselling them because of what it's like in the prison. So do you guys think that the free laborers are very happy about the situation? No. And they are vexed to the extent that they organize in labors, get laws passed that severely restrict the number of hours inmates can work in here. And so what that translates to is by the 1890s, over 95% of inmates in here are idle for several decades. So with an overcrowded communal prison, is idleness a very good thing? So the prison does have to react to what the conditions become. One thing that goes up at that time is the riot gates, like the one we just passed through. Every cell has one where the cells end. So say if the inmates in cell block 1 begin making mischief, that gate can be closed so the trouble doesn't spread. You'll see those in every other cell block around here. But also, well, if you can't have your inmates doing paid work, what's another way to get them engaged in at least some kind of communal activity?
Sports.
Sports. Sports absolutely do fill the void. Baseball was by far the most popular, but looking at that picture, who can tell what's another sport was played on that field?
Baseball.
Yes, baseball was one, but what's another sport there? What's that striped pole doing on top of the goalpost? Well, it is goalpost on top of the backstop. Football is another sport played. There's also basketball, handball, bocce ball, weightlifting came a little bit later. One thing that's sort of weird is these inmate teams were terrible. By 1900, high school teams were often brought in here and routinely creamed the inmates. But the city championship chess team several years in the 1960s, so defying expectations. Anyway, though, I do think sports is illustrative for a couple of reasons. First, if you're out playing baseball all day long, are you spending that time repenting?
Yeah.
Probably not. You do see a compromise of ideas here. They're not really trying for reform by any means anymore at this point. Also, though, infrastructure. Eastern no longer functions as kind of this isolated fortress. This is the north wall right there. It's a very short field. You can see it from center if you look through the window between blocks 3 and 4. I guess, well, even if you're not that great a baseball player, it's not difficult to hit a home run right over that wall. But tons of row homes the other side. The neighbors are not that happy with balls like flying all over themselves, houses, cars, kids, pets, whatever else they've got out there. But really, the bigger problem is not so much balls going over that wall, it's balls coming back. I don't know how inmates orchestrated this system, but somehow a guy in here was able to say to a buddy outside, maybe even like a former inmate from Eastern, like, alright, well, come Monday morning, I'm gonna hit over a baseball. You'll know it's mine because, let's see, he'll put a blue dot on it. So, the guy on the other side will show up, keep an eye out for that blue dotted baseball. Once he finds it, he's going to take out the stitching and the stuffing, fill it up with other things. What's he putting in that baseball? Drugs, yeah. Drugs is the #1 sports ball filler. So yeah, and that actually does highlight another problem, which is gangs. In the 20th century, even like early on, inmates in here said if you wanted to be protected in this prison, you had to belong to a gang. They were always drug-related, always cleaved along racial lines as well. This was a segregated prison till 1960. The black inmates had to stay for the most part in cell blocks 4 and 5 because the kitchens are between them. They have to work there.